Channel open. Welcome back to WeeklyTrek, a proud member of the Tricorder Transmissions podcast network. I am your host, Alex Perry.
What's today's date? The date.
Today's show was recorded on January 24th, 2020, and is current through the, and I'm very excited to say this, Star Trek Picard episode Remembrance. So beware of spoilers. And boy, I'm sure there will be a few spoilers about the pilot of Star Trek Picard on today's episode. So all right, let's get into the show.
Good day, Voyager, and welcome to A Briefing with Neelix. It's a catchy title, isn't it?
WeeklyTrek is a 30-minute news show covering the biggest stories from the Star Trek franchise. We are in a new golden age of Star Trek. There are 5 television shows in production, possibly more on the way, and enough merchandise to fill the Bajoran wormhole. So stick with me, and I'll help you sort the real facts from a lot of the Dominion propaganda that you'll find online. But I can't do this alone, and my guest this week is returning guest and co-host of the Snap Trek podcast. It is Jenn Tifft. Jenn, welcome back to WeeklyTrek.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here on this momentous week.
Momentous week. It is finally here. We finally have seen Jean-Luc Picard back on our TV screens. So Jenn, I just like last week when I was talking to Marina, I think I probably know the answer to this question, but I'll ask it all the same. I'd like to know something that's got you feeling good about Star Trek at the moment. What's got you moving at Warp 10?
It's all happening. You know exactly what I'm going to say. Of course, it's Picard.
Of course, it's Picard.
But in particular, it's just the excitement leading up to it. And then yesterday's, Captain Picard Day, it really felt like Captain Picard Day, like a holiday. And it was just so joyful. And now, I live in a world where for the next 9 weeks, I get another adventure with Jean-Luc Picard on my screen. And it's just amazing. There's nothing like the anticipation leading up to it. And then the day, we talked about this a little offline, but I watched it 3 times yesterday. And
I watched it 6.
You beat me. Yeah, I was going to say. And you watched it even more.
You watched it first, right?
I did.
Tell everyone what time you were up in the morning.
Well, I knew my body, knowing that I'm on the East Coast and knowing that it was coming out at 3 a.m. here, I knew my body was going to wake me up whether I wanted, consciously wanted to or not. So, and I was right. So, like 3:05, I woke up and checked the clock and I'm like, well, Picard's available. I'm going to have to watch it. I can't just roll, turn around and roll back and go back to sleep after, knowing that it's available.
That is an awfully punctual body clock.
Oh, my I can do that. That's one of my few superpowers is my internal clock. But
mine managed to keep me asleep until 4:30.
Yeah,
so I was slightly behind you.
But even so,
still, it was still dark outside for another 2.5 hours after I woke up.
It was, yeah.
But morning darkness, what perfect time to watch an episode. It's dark outside, you've got it dark in the room. It's very cinematic.
It was.
It's a little early. I had to put my headphones on so I didn't wake up my wife. But
that's what I did too.
It's actually a good way of, I actually like watching with the headphones on because you do pick up a lot of the audio detail that you otherwise don't if you don't have a great and perfectly calibrated sound system like I don't.
Yeah, and the only problem is I didn't bust open my bottle of Chateau Picard for my first viewing.
It was a little early in the morning, correct? Yes, same here.
But for my 3rd viewing in the evening, I opened it up and I was shocked by how good the wine was.
I mean, it's a genuine Chateau Picard Bordeaux Cru. All I'm saying, and for $60, it better be good wine.
Yeah, well, that's true. But it was really good. I mean, it was earthy, but it also a little bit fruity. You could taste some like hints of blackberry, and it was actually really good. It was a little sugary. I tend to like a 0 sugar red, but it wasn't too sweet either, but it was really good. I was drinking the 2016, like I said, 2386 or whatever. but the 2016 version, I think now they're selling the 2017.
They are now selling the 17, correct?
Yeah, but it was really delicious, and I drank a little too much of that.
Oh, as you do. It's a celebration.
Exactly. It really did. It felt like a holiday. It felt like a celebration. It was a wonderful day.
And we get to do it 9 more times. All right. Well, with that, let's turn to the week's top stories.
There's a war going on, and I'm a reporter.
That I need to bring up, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
I'm here with a formal invitation, and it's for you, Whoopi.
Oh, for me?
Alex Kurtzman, who is the senior executive producer of Star Trek Picard, and all of his colleagues, of which I am one, want to invite you into the second season.
To you now, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
So many offers she's getting lately.
Really?
Yes.
Look at that smile.
I just said to him, does she have to take the hair thing off? And he said she can do whatever she wants.
Absolutely.
This was one of the great experiences of my. I've said this on the show before, but Star Trek was one of the great experiences from the beginning to the end. It just,
Look at you guys.
I had the best time. Best time ever.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, it was wonderful having you, and we cannot wait to have you with us again one more time.
So as you heard there, Sir Patrick Stewart was appearing on The View, and to the shock of everybody involved, and it seems like no less than to the shock of Whoopi Goldberg herself, he issued a formal invitation from himself and the rest of the producers of Star Trek Picard to have a role in the show on season 2. Which, of course, also, as you also heard, Whoopi readily accepted. I think she was actually quite visibly emotional by the invitation and by the idea of returning to Star Trek, which was clearly an experience that she felt really good about and was very fulfilled by and is excited by the prospect of returning to. We know that season 2 preparation is well underway. The formal announcement of renewal for the show only came last week, but from all of the tea leaves that we read, the preparation for season 2 has been in the works for at least 6 weeks by this point. And so they probably have a sense of what they sort of want for Whoopi and what her role returning as Guinan would be in the story. But Jenn, we now know one of the next legacy characters to appear in the second season of Star Trek Picard. I would just, you feeling good at all about Whoopi Goldberg reprising her role as Guinan?
Guinan is such a special character. And I think out of literally everyone besides Jean-Luc Picard, that is the character I was hoping for. So this was a wonderful surprise. And I watched that video and I cried. It made me cry.
Made everybody cry. It made Patrick cry. It made Whoopi cry. It made Meghan McCain cry, which I think is an unusual thing on The View.
Let's not bring in her into this happy occasion. Oh my! But yeah, that's so wonderful, and it's funny too because I'm sure this isn't the first Whoopi is hearing of this. I know that's not how it works,
right?
But her emotion seemed genuine.
Totally.
So you could tell this really, based on the other things she says, and in other interviews, I mean, you could tell that this really does mean a lot to her playing Guinan, and it means a lot to me too. And it's so exciting! I cannot wait to see our seasoned Picard interacting with Guinan.
She has always been counted on to help kind of set him straight when he's on the wrong path. I watched the premiere of Picard 3 times, and then because it's obviously so integral to the story of the show, I went back and watched The Measure of a Man.
I watched that yesterday too, and The Offspring.
Right. Me too. I watched them back to back. I was like, how can I not? And in Measure of a Man particularly, but obviously you could pick out 20 episodes in which Guinan plays this role.
Right.
But this was probably one of the first times she did it, actually. You know, Picard is facing some kind of quandary or crisis or, you know, something that he's not sure what the next move is. And she sort of comes in and very kind of makes him see things in a different light and get the solution that he needs in order to solve whatever problem it is. And so for this man who clearly has had something of a troubled, you know, decade and a half, a troubled departure from Starfleet, who, in his own words in the premiere, hasn't been living, he's been waiting to die. I think kind of reintroducing that Guinan character to maybe help steer him back on the right path at a critical moment is exactly the kind of thing you would expect from their long-term relationship. And if you're going to do 3 seasons of a Picard show, how can you not have this seminal character and this seminal relationship return in some form to serve the story? And ideally, you know, it feels like part of the push of this, and obviously we've only seen 1 out of the 30 possible episodes that they've talked about for the show, but it does feel like part of the direction they want to go in is pushing Picard back to being the man he was and repairing himself from the man that he had become. And, you know, who better to help him along that journey than Guinan?
Oh, yes. No one, everything you said is so spot on. I mean, Guinan is wise and, you know, and understands people in general, but her bond with Picard is so unique. She understands him in a way nobody else does and can get through to him in a way no one else can for whatever, you know, whatever situation that they'll find themselves in the second season. And yeah, you can't have this without Guinan. And I'm so pleased that we know for sure that she's coming back.
Oh, yes, it's going to be so good. But it will be a long time before we learn anything more about what her role will be.
And that's fine.
Oh, totally fine.
That's fine, because we've got a lot of Star Trek in the meantime.
Exactly. We got a lot of Star Trek in the meantime.
Yes.
I noticed today that on the Star Trek Twitter account, they dropped a short. It was not a new trailer for Star Trek Discovery, but it was recut trailer, short version of the New York Comic Con trailer, you know, that just said coming soon, just sort of as a way of saying, hey guys, you're all really excited about Picard, but don't forget, once that's finished, you've got another show coming right at you.
Oh my gosh, how wonderful.
Yeah, so it'll be a while, but it's not like there isn't plenty to keep us busy in the meantime. Well, our next story for the week actually is a tie-in directly to the premiere of Star Trek Picard. It is an interview that TrekCore had coming out of the press tour that took place just before the premiere event in LA last weekend. The assembled press did have the opportunity to see the first episode before they went into the press junket, so there were a number of questions that were spoiler questions about what was in the first episode. So we're now just starting to see those interviews sort of crawl out because they contain plot details for the premiere. And so this was sort of an amalgamation of answers from the producers about the role of Data, and then from Issa Briones about Daj. So on the Data question, obviously the series premiere for Star Trek Picard, Data is still dead. The B4 memory transfer that took place as part of Star Trek Nemesis, that at the end of the movie you thought might be his sort of path to returning, even though Data was destroyed aboard the Scimitar, we find out didn't work, that most of Data's neural net was lost as part of that. And, you know, B4 is just sort of sitting in parts in a drawer somewhere, though it seems, interestingly, you know, he is the progenitor for this kind of new race of synths that were created and seem to have gone rogue at some point in the past. We're still kind of learning the details of that. And so I think somebody asked a question of Akiva Goldsman and Michael Chabon about, you know, Data being dead and the B4 thing not having worked, and, you know, therefore, you know, what did they make of that? To which the producers didn't necessarily really know quite how to respond and kind of skirted around the question. I mean, Akiva Goldsman even said, you know, there are so many implicit assumptions in the idea that Data is dead and that B4 can't be used to resurrect him that I cannot confirm or deny. And then a bit later said, I think we're dancing around the idea that there's an assumption in terms of what story points we've closed off and what we haven't. So I think the question might have been something like, why did you decide not to resurrect Data or something like that? And I think they're basically saying, you know, it's not necessarily off the table that Data will only appear in dream form or flashback form, that maybe there is some path here to a physical resurrection for the character in some form. And Michael Chabon said, it's a question we want you to be asking. So it does seem like Brent Spiner had said that Data had a more limited role in the series. And now we've started to see what that looks like in terms of his appearance in the show. You know, he showed up in these 2 dream sequences, but I mean, the whole show is about Data. At least that's what we're being led to believe. It's about androids. It's about Data. There's some Borg tie-in that we don't really have a good handle on yet. But what we do know is that it's about androids and Data's legacy as manifested by Bruce Maddox. So I think, you know, there is a lot going on here that we have not yet kind of scratched the surface of. The other interesting thing is they were talking to Issa Briones about Daj and how she is an android. And I guess that she revealed that she had not been told that her character was a twin until very late in the audition process, but also felt like the idea of one actress playing multiple characters harkened back to Brent Spiner playing Lore and Data and B4 and Noonien Sung. And so she was sort of continuing that legacy of playing multiple different versions of the same character. But Jen, I mean, it seems like, you know, Data's not very present, but this is very much a Data show, don't you think?
Well, yeah. And you know, and obviously it was a lot of his memories of Data, which is what was haunting Picard for all these years. And you know, and obviously, that wonderful scene where he's explaining to Daj, you know, who she is, and he's talking about, you know, how her memories are hers, and no one can take that away. But he says, like, you are special or important to me in ways you can't even understand, because she's part of Data and he's going to protect her. And that's what, you know, that was so wonderful. And I love, and Issa Briones, amazing in this episode. And it really affected me when she died, because first of all, you know, I want to protect her too, because she's part of Data. And because I also was very sad that we were going to lose such a talented actress so soon. I don't fully get the technical reason why that has to be twins. Why, you know, they said that this process makes twins for some reason, which is I'm totally fine with, because we get her back, and it is kind of a Star Trek thing, isn't it? You know?
Totally a Star Trek thing.
Star Trek. So I love that. I'm totally down with that. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where they go, because especially, you know, I like that they shut down the B4 thing, but he's in the drawer, like he's still there. I don't think they would have bothered doing that, like showing us him, unless, you know, kind of factored on down the line somewhere, him and Dana and everything. So, but I can't wait to find out.
Yeah, can't wait to find out. There's so much here we just really kind of don't know yet. I'll tell you what, though, I will much more readily believe in the idea of fractal neuronic cloning than I will in the idea that necklace was at all unusual.
I know, right? It's literally just 2 circles. You know, like that's something they advertise around Valentine's Day, you know, like the K jeweler, you know, Infinite Heart or whatever.
Drop by Claire's and you can buy 10 different variations for under $5.
Oh man.
No, I kid really because funny. I love the premiere. I love the pilot. A nice merchandise tie-in, Rockstar have actually just today started selling that necklace online.
Oh, really?
So you can buy it. I think it's like $95 or something like that.
$95?
Yeah, they launched a Star Trek line today, and that's one of the primo.
Oh, I'll have to look at that, though.
Speaking of merchandising Star Trek shows, there was an announcement this week that will make you happy if you are both a Star Trek fan and a fan of the Funko Pop line of vinyl figures that have taken over the world. It's been a few years since the last Star Trek Funko Pops were released. The last set were for Star Trek Beyond. They'd also done a few of the original series characters. Most of the Next Generation cast, though, with the notable exception of Dr. Beverly Crusher, but it was announced at London Toy Fair over the weekend that the first Star Trek Discovery Funko Pops would be released in June of this year. The first two releases in the line are Michael Burnham and Commander Saru, who appear in their season 2 uniforms. So Saru in the gold and Michael Burnham in the silver with her badge once her rank was restored at the end of season 1. These actually look really nice. I mean, they look just like Funko Pops. So, if you are a Funko Pop fan, they will scratch your itch of Star Trek Funko Pops. If you're not a Funko Pop fan, I doubt these will get you into them. I have some. I think I might pick up at least one of these. The Burnham one, I think, does look really good. But it's exciting to see that, there are like 10 different Funko Pops just of Conan O'Brien. So it's exciting to see that they are continuing to do some more Star Trek characters after the line felt like it fizzled out a few years ago. Jen, Funko Pops, are you on the train or are you off the train?
They're not my thing.
Totally fair.
But I'm really glad when I saw that. I'm really glad that they exist, because anytime they're making Star Trek merch, means there might be more coming and different things. So, and I know some people really love those Funko Pop things. So if they're that popular and they're making Star Trek versions of them, that can only be a good thing.
And it has felt notable to me that for such a cultural phenomenon, you walk into any entertainment store, bookstore, you just find these things everywhere.
Yeah. That
the Star Trek line had not thrived, that they had done most of TOS, most of TNG, they'd done some Star Trek Beyond figures, and then they just sort of stopped and left it at that, despite doing multiple variations of Conan O'Brien, who is a fabulous comedian and a fabulous TV presenter, but ultimately, do we really need 10 Conan O'Briens? Couldn't we get a Dr. Crusher at some point? So it is exciting to see them go back to that. Hopefully it will be successful and will spawn more. And I think given the attention that the shows are getting right now, and frankly, given that, the only other Michael Burnham merchandise you can really get your hands on is that very small Titan figure that they did, 2 years ago. So gives Discovery fans an opportunity to express their fandom, which is very cool.
Yeah, hopefully there'll be more down the line of those for the people who like to collect them, and more of everything else too. I feel like there's a lot of opportunities here. I'm hoping if Picard gets a little bit more mainstream, maybe there'll be more merchandise available,
Yeah, my thoughts on the state of Star Trek merchandising and how terrible it is are on record. If you're interested, go back to the 2019 Year in Review episode where I talked about it at length. But with the release of Picard, I have been pretty impressed. That Daj necklace went up today. The premiere was just yesterday. That's a good opportunity to capitalize upon a character that people like. And as ridiculous as I thought it was, that it was an unusual necklace, to capitalize on what is a central kind of prop piece from that first episode. And then today, StarTrek.com started selling T-shirts with the Daystrom Institute logo on it from the premiere. That's the kind of stuff you should be doing to monetize, right. Some of the stuff that people see on screen and they want it, and they want something related to it, and then you're immediately offering them. That's very good, and I hope signals that we're starting to turn the corner, but we will see. Well, from Funko Pops to comic books, in another exciting announcement for Star Trek shows that have not necessarily been well served by the medium in which we're talking about, they have announced a Star Trek Deep Space Nine comic series, a limited series. I think it's 4 issues, Too Long a Sacrifice, by David Tipton and Scott Tipton, who are prolific Star Trek comic writers and have written a number of Star Trek comics, including the Next Generation Mirror Universe comics, and also with art by Greg Scott. So this is the first Star Trek Deep Space Nine comic series in over a decade. IDW's only done one other 4-issue Star Trek Deep Space Nine comic. And very poignantly, this series actually focuses on Odo as the main character. So it's been described as a noir thriller. Set during the most difficult hours of the Dominion War, Too Long a Sacrifice shows the station during trying times. A series of mysterious and seemingly unsolvable terrorist attacks just as the war has everyone strained to the breaking point. David Tipton, who's one of the comic writers, says we'll get to see the darker side of life on the station as Odo leads the investigation, with increasingly desperate conditions forcing him and the others to deal with new and unexpected allies and to use unusual tactics in their efforts to stop the attacks. That all sounds super exciting, so I'm thrilled they're returning to Deep Space Nine. Jen, how you feeling about this one?
Yeah, well, I'm not a big comic book fan either, but I know a lot of people are going to be very excited about this, and especially that it's Deep Space Nine. How wonderful! My favorite series, getting some love in this area. But I'm actually thinking about picking this one up because when reading that article described as a noir thriller, which is noir thrillers in sci-fi is a genre of book that I really enjoy reading. So I'm thinking maybe I would enjoy this. This to get me to start, to a good place to start in comic books. Noir thriller on Deep Space Nine sounds right up my alley.
Noir thriller, Deep Space Nine, Odo. You can't ask for kind of three better elements to kick off what hopefully will be an excellent story. And I'm sure your Snap Trek co-host Ross, who is a huge comics fan, is bouncing off the walls.
Ross has probably already pre-ordered this. But they don't normally do that sort of story. Like noir thrillers in sci-fi are rare. But I really, I don't know if you've ever read like Robert J. Sawyer. He did Red Planet Blues, which I really loved. But so I've read like novels in that genre, but you don't get them. They don't come around too often. So I might actually pick this up too, at the very least, just so I can talk to Ross and you about it.
All right. Well, we've talked about the facts, and now let's speculate on what's going to happen in the future of Star Trek.
You make some very good points, Captain. But it's still all speculation and theory.
So each week, I and my guests give you a wish or theory we're nurturing about Picard, Discovery, the future of the franchise. With Picard now out, there is all new set of things to talk about, theorize, wish about, and speculate that is based in the show itself. So Jen, let's hear your theory or wish for this week.
Okay, well, I'm not going Picard.
Awesome. Even better.
But my wish is kind of based on what we saw. So, especially like with the Guinan news, and after seeing this first episode with some of the unexpected names that were dropped, I might not have been expecting, in just the first episode of Picard. So this is my wish for all of the upcoming Star Trek shows, but especially for Lower Decks, is that I want the most random of the rando cameos that you can imagine. Like characters you would never think of would come back. I want to see them or hear about what they're doing. Like random, I do, of course, I want the heavy hitters, of course, Guinan, that's amazing. But I think now there's potential, especially in a show with Lower Decks where it can just be their voices, so you don't have to, it seems like it'd be easier to just name drop someone or, just have, this random character come back, random, like Ensign Vorik, like maybe Captain Vorik stops by, for just or they mention what Captain Vorik on this ship is doing, just like random stuff like that. That's what I want. That's the kind of like the little bits of fan service that don't take away from anything, but are just like little gems. That's what I want. That's my wish.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, before Picard came out, we joked about that kind of thing. And, Lower Decks certainly indicated that because Mike McMahon had said, it'll have sort of returning characters, but not the ones you expect, which made me think, sort of more obscure characters.
Yeah.
But I thought that something like Picard would shy away from bringing back these non-next generation kind of main characters, and would shy away from sort of name dropping or referencing them. And then in the pilot of the show, they have this long description of this character, Bruce Maddox, who only appeared once in The Measure of a Man and was referenced again in Data's Day, but not seen, who has this really important role in the story as a whole.
Right.
And I think it's possible we might see him in Star Trek Picard, and I think it's possible that he might have actually already shown up in one of the trailers. So we'll see about that. But I mean, they've set this character up as having been the creator of one of the show's regular cast members. And so I think, at this point, odds on money are that we're going to see Bruce Maddox at some point, which means if we're going to see Bruce Maddox, who else could we possibly see?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, because I'm sorry, I can't remember the character's name, but the doctor at the Daystrom Institute, Girardi. Well, she makes it a point to say, after the ban, Bruce Maddox disappeared.
Right.
Like, you're not going to say that unless that's going to come up again. There's no reason to say that unless that's going to come up again later. So I think you're right on that. And I hope so. I mean, how great. That's what made me think of it. That's what brought this to a head. It's like, oh, even in Picard, they're getting like just you said, one episode character. And, we did mention him. And that's nothing, man. Data was your pen pal. You better not be the bad guy.
Yeah, true.
Like, we still don't know if he's like the bad guy, the big baddie or not, or if he's or what his deal is. But man, I'm gonna be mad at him because I thought he might have learned his lesson.
I know Melinda Snodgrass, who was the writer of Measure of a Man, she has a Twitter account and she tweets somewhat regularly. And she tweeted, I was really pleased to hear that this character that I created for the Measure of a Man appeared in the Star Trek Picard pilot, but I'm a little disappointed to hear that he didn't learn any lessons coming out of that episode. Which I guess we'll see. We don't know that.
We'll see. We don't know. But yeah, I'll be disappointed in him too. Especially after, Data's your pen pal, man.
Right.
Come on.
So my wish is sort of similar in some ways, but it's a specific wish for a specific character.
Ooh, okay.
And actually one that is a distinct possibility if you believe what Robert Picardo said last summer about having been approached to appear in season 2 of Star Trek Picard, and that's that I would really like the Doctor, the EMH from Star Trek Voyager, to appear in the show. When we had talked about it over the summer, and Picardo had said, my people have been contacted about the possibility of me appearing, it was very much for me in the context of there's a Borg component to this show. The Doctor is certainly one of the foremost experts on the Borg, and therefore, makes a ton of sense. But actually now I'm really interested in seeing the Doctor for a whole different reason, which is that this is a Federation that has clearly taken a really hard turn against synthetic life forms.
Right.
Androids is the way that it's manifest itself, in that the attack on Mars seems to have been perpetrated by some sort of offshoots of Soong-type androids that have been created by the Daystrom Institute. But in that kind of society where the creation of synthetic life has been banned, where it seems like, maybe there has been a bit of an upswing in prejudice towards that kind of life, how does the Doctor fare? He is a synthetic life form. Granted, he's not an android, he's a hologram. But at the same time, he sort of fits that same bill in a way. And in addition to all of his expertise in the Borg, I would love to just see how he, as one of the only other kind of prominent characters who is not a flesh and blood organic person, kind of lives in the world that the Federation now finds itself in, where, maybe it's not such a friendly place to be for non-organic life forms.
Yeah, Joe, man, we got to get Joe in on this. I actually thought of the Doctor too when we met the character of the Index.
Right.
Because I thought, well, holograms seem to be allowed, or is there a way to keep her from becoming sentient, or what's going? Yeah, because I want to know more about how holograms are faring in this future. Because you're right. It's the same kind of problems that you would have with androids. So yeah, and you're right. And we already know that the Doctor would be on the forefront of any kind of, photonic rights activism in that area. So it would be great to see. And it's very relevant to what we even just saw in this first episode. So yeah, I hope so too.
So I hope that Sir Patrick Stewart has showed up at Robert Picardo's house and has said he's there with a formal invitation from the producers of Star Trek Picard, and they would love for him to appear in the show in season 2.
I just want little videos of Picard knocking on the door of every cast member that we've ever known and saying, congratulations, you're coming on Picard. I would watch that endlessly.
100%. Absolutely.
Oh, man. And you don't know who it is until like he or she opens the door, you know.
Uh-huh.
Knock on the door. Like, oh, guess it's Beverly. Oh,
Whoa.
I love it. And just on that topic, are we gonna get to see the Rikers next week? I feel like it might be next week.
I think it's going to be later in the season, personally.
Darn it.
Because
well, it's definitely before he goes on his adventure.
Well, I thought I had read somewhere that actually they're on a planet. But it's not Earth.
Oh yeah. Why would I assume they were on Earth? I guess it kind of looked like Alaska to me.
Yeah,
but
right.
Yeah, it could be Beta Z. It could be just a random planet. That's true.
Because I think they filmed their scenes in because Frakes said at STLV he had filmed a little bit and that he was going to film it more later. And they started filming in April. So if he didn't get to set until August, to me, that says his appearance is in a much later episode, unless they filmed it and then stuck it back in, because it does seem like there was maybe some restructuring of the season that took place, because they have kind of moved around the directors a bit. Like Hunley Culpepper was supposed to do 1 and 2, then Frakes was going to do 3, 4, but now Hunley's done 1, 2, 3, Frakes has done 4, 5, and then a couple of the directors towards the end of the season only did 1 episode where they were going to do 2. So there has been a bit of a move around of the structure of the story, so it's possible that the Rikers kind of got moved up, but just based on the way it was filmed, I think they show up later in the season.
Oh, I can't wait for that.
But that's fun though, because we know we get, so Jerry Ryan said her first episode was directed by Jonathan Frakes. We know it's going to be either 4 or 5 that she appears in. So we get that 4 or 5, and then it'd be nice to have something new later in the season.
That's true.
To look forward to.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait for 7. I can't believe she's coming back.
In only a short couple of weeks.
Oh, I can't believe it. It still just seems surreal, even though we saw the first episode already.
I know.
It's so wonderful.
It does not end here.
What a time.
It just keeps going.
Yeah.
Do you have a theory or wish for Discovery, Picard, or the future of the franchise that you'd like to share? Tweet them to me at WeeklyTrek, and I might feature your theory in a future episode. Well, that's all the time we've got for this episode of Weekly Trek. Thank you so much to my guest, Jenn Tifft, for joining me today. Jen, how can people contact you if they want to continue the conversation?
On Twitter, at Edith Quarks, and also my podcast, Snap Trek, is on Twitter, also at Snap Trek. And yeah, please do contact me, and we can talk at no end about any Picard thing you want to talk about, because I can't shut up about it.
And you can find this show on Twitter at WeeklyTrek and me at Alexander T. Perry. And if you enjoy the show, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast player of choice. And please check out some of the other great shows on the Tricorder Transmissions. And if you like our shows, please consider becoming a Patreon of Tricorder, which you can find at patreon.com/the Tricorder Transmissions. And lastly, if you're looking for Star Trek news on the internet, I hope you will turn to trekcore.com. Well, thank you, Jen. Thank you to all of my listeners. And until next week, live long and prosper.